My childhood. My childhood was like many others. I believe my parents did the best they could with their level of consciousness. My basic needs were always met, and I believe that they wanted a good life for me. I was unhappy though, and looking back, I can see clearly how the negative thoughts and limiting beliefs I took in from my environment and made a part of my own belief system shaped my experience. I grew up in a two-parent household. First with my older sister, 6 years my senior, and then with adopted siblings as well. My dad was in the military, and my mom worked at various jobs after I had started school. Just before I turned 5, we moved from Fort Ritchie, Maryland to Omaha, Nebraska, where I would go through grade school. I was an imaginative child, often told to get my head out of the clouds. My teachers claimed I would do much better in school if I would only stop daydreaming and pay attention in class. I always had some sort of scenario playing out in my mind, whether a fantasy or some worrisome imagined future. I was too sensitive. My feelings were often hurt. My mother would tell me I needed a thicker skin. She apologized when she hurt my feelings, but I always felt deep down that she was sorry I was so sensitive, not about her words. I didn't know if she really meant to hurt me, but I felt certain she was disappointed in me for being so easily hurt, whatever her intentions. I was shy and had trouble making friends. Throughout school, I had only one close friend at a time, if that. I made acquaintanceships with friends of my friend, neighborhood kids, and fellow Girl Scouts, but very few became real friendships. I was often lonely and felt like I didn't truly fit in anywhere. I spent a lot of time philosophizing for a child. I didn't realize the kinds of things I thought about were unusual for children to ponder. I wondered how much control I had over my life. I used to wonder, was God playing Barbies with us, where everything was out of our control and based on His whims, or was I God, creating my own life? I suspected I somehow had control over what would happen to me. I used to try to manifest events, though I didn't know the term manifest. I would visualize what I wanted to happen during the course of a night and focus strongly on trying to bring it about as an experiment, just to see if I could. I felt like I should be able to. It never worked the way I thought it should, though, so I determined I was wrong and was at the mercy of a God who controlled everything. I can also remember trying to perform laying of hands healing on our pets as a child. I guess I was playing Jesus, trying to heal like He did. I prayed a lot and believed Jesus loved me and was always with me. My mother had told me to speak to Him like a friend. I thought of Him as God's Son. God was who I gave thanks to. I knew we were all supposed to be children of God, and so I thought Jesus was like a brother, the favorite child who got all God's attention and was chosen to be the ultimate example of goodness, but still a child of God like me. My prayers were sympathetic to what it must be like to be Him, with all that pressure. I offered my sympathy for all the prayers He had to screen for God. I don't know why I thought this was His job, and I tried not to ask for much, other than the blessings for my family. I experienced depression and anxiety for as far back as I can remember, though I didn't know those labels for what I was feeling as a child. I was sick a lot, and my teachers and the school nurse, as well as my parents, believed I was faking it to try to get out of going to school. I just wasn't a good student and didn't want to apply myself. Now I know that all the stomach trouble I was experiencing was probably a result of the anxiety I always felt. When I was 9, we adopted my older brother, who was 15, the same age as my sister, which took a bit of adjustment, but looking back, he seemed to fit into our family rather quickly and easily. He was a stranger when he moved into our home, but it didn't feel that way for long. He became one of my best friends, and I loved him as deeply as my biological sister. My siblings and I fought like all brothers and sisters do. We experienced sibling rivalry, but we're also close. Some of my best memories are of times we spent together. Despite this, I often felt like I didn't fit in with my family. I felt like I was different, and I worried that they didn't really like me, let alone love me, and would never truly accept me. After fifth grade, when I was 11, my family moved from Omaha, Nebraska to Excelsior Springs, Missouri. This move was extremely hard for me, and I fell into a rather deep depression. It was at this point that I started having suicidal thoughts. It took me a long time to make any friends. I was bullied by the popular kids, and I felt more alone and out of place than ever. By the end of seventh grade, 2 years after moving, I had just one good friend. She was also new to the area and a bit traumatized herself after moving to Excelsior Springs from St. Louis. We had both experienced a culture shock moving from large cities to a small town, and I think that made us close. She was the one bright spot in middle school for me. My friend's parents were strict and seemed to expect perfection from her, so she was often too busy with schoolwork or extracurricular activities to hang out with me. When I was with her, I felt hopeful things would work out for me, like there was a chance I could fit in with the world that she seemed to live in. When she was busy, I felt terribly alone and scared. In an attempt to fit in, both with my family and with the kids at school, I started making bad choices. My parents and older siblings smoked marijuana, and in middle school, I began smoking too. I don't think I really wanted to get high. I just didn't want to feel so different and thought maybe if I were the type of person who smoked, I would fit in with them better. Of course, my parents weren't going to be more accepting because of it, but it did seem to make me more appealing to my siblings and other kids, and I found myself getting attention from the stoners at school. They started letting me hang around more, and I didn't feel as lonely. Most of the kids I began hanging out with were from a lower socioeconomic class than I was. I didn't really understand the things they went through. Most of them had single mothers who worked all the time and struggled to keep the bills paid and keep a close eye on their kids. They spent a lot of time unsupervised. They experienced times without utilities or enough food to eat, and I never knew what that was like. Unlike the kids that were in my socioeconomic class, though, these kids didn't seem to judge me and find something missing. They seemed to accept me, and that feeling of acceptance was much more important to me than making good life choices. My choices became very dependent on what I thought would gain me the most acceptance. I started skipping school frequently. I didn't care about my grades or my future. I wasn't smart enough or good enough to have the future I used to dream about as a college graduate and career woman with a happy family. Success was meant for smarter, better people. I let those dreams go and just focused on trying to feel decent and fit in. I thought if I could just fit in, I would be okay. My good friend's father saw me out walking in town on a school day one afternoon, and she was forbidden from speaking to me again. It was one of the most heartbreaking consequences of my behavior at that time. I was very sad, but in a strange way, it felt to me like losing that friendship had been inevitable, and it was almost a relief to feel like I didn't have to keep pretending to be good enough for her friendship anymore.